Good morning and welcome to the Lancaster Criminal Justice Commission meeting on the 11th of February. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Roll call, please, Brett.
Commissioner Brown, Carter, Little,
Present.
Smith,
Present.
Underwood Jacobs,
Present.
Velasquez,
Present.
Chairman Vieira.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Did Pastor John Meadows make it? No? Okay, if everyone could please rise and join me in saluting our flag. Please place your right hand over your heart and begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we're going to start off with a presentation on administrative citations from Mr. Lee Dorico.
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman Vieira, Commissioners. What we're going to talk about today is the last couple meetings we've had some discussions about incarceration rates and legislation and things that have occurred over the last several years in the state of California, and specifically some items that addressed issues here in Los Angeles County. Being the most focused ones recently is AB 109, which we're all very familiar with at this point, leading into AB 2124, which is a 12-month deferral process just in LA County alone for misdemeanor cases, and now with Prop 47 last November coming into play. And based on those issues and some of the decriminalization of some crimes and the reduction of other crimes from felonies that could be wobblers or misdemeanors to straight misdemeanors, and especially as it relates to larceny type crimes, which is what drives our numbers here specifically in Lancaster. And you're going to see that based on presentations today. That's still exactly what's driving numbers for us. So what we did is, at the direction of the city manager and the city council, is came up with a plan to incorporate a process for administratively managing some of these cases that typically, depending on someone's background, might be managed differently at the court, at the judicial process. So it becomes an option for our law enforcement folks and for us at the city. Now, we already have an administrative site process that deals with code enforcement violations and other issues we have with building and safety there. This is an expansion of that process to be inclusive and try and fill in some of the gaps as it relates to Prop 47. So again, Jocelyn will talk about the ordinance and some of the theory behind it. But again, the City Council moved forward last night with adopting it. Our purpose now is to bring it to the Commission and have discussion for public comment for possible adjustments or any plan we move forward. It's a fluid plan. It's initiated and moving forward at the same time. Anything that comes forward from the Commission making a recommendation, the Council will be considered by the Council.
Thank you. Good morning. So Ordinance 1001 was adopted by City Council last night. What it does is it provides that an administrative citation may be issued to a person who commits certain offenses: shoplifting, forgery, theft, receiving stolen property, unlawful dumping, disturbing the peace, and vandalism. For the first citation, the penalty is $500. The second and any subsequent citation is $1,000. The idea is to deter or dissuade persons from committing these offenses in the city of Lancaster by hitting them in their pocketbook. We're going to be working very closely with the Sheriff's Department in rolling this out and implementing the system, because they have procedures in place, and we obviously want to complement their practices rather than compete with them or conflict with them. And Mr. Dorico has also had a lot of conversation with the judges at the local courthouse, and we're kind of looking at this in a holistic way. The ordinance allows for administrative due process rights. A person who's issued a citation can file an appeal. They'll have a hearing before an independent hearing officer, and if the citation is upheld by that hearing officer, the person cited has also the option then to file a petition with the court. So they have a couple of bites at the apple, if you will. We're going to see how this plays out. We're just trying whatever we can try to deter people from repeat shoplifting, repeat theft, to protect primarily our local businesses and obviously our residents as well.
And I think the thing that's the biggest part of this is typically the city seeks a remedy financially from folks in different avenues that the court traditionally seeks. So there's things that we can do based on a municipality as far as attaching things through the state franchise tax board or registration fees or things typically that impact people. And I will tell you, after 30 years of working in the public safety field, the thing that usually gets people's attention most, if you're not going to incarcerate people, is financial. Okay, creating an issue for them that's a hardship for them or their family to try and deter that type of behavior. The reality is we as a city and in government, our first priority is the safety of our communities. And I think as we have these discussions and we have people come forward and the topic these days is less incarceration based on certain type of criminal offenses that are deemed to be nonviolent, we still have victims. There are still victims of these crimes. And I think our first priority for us as a government, as this commission, our city council, and law enforcement is to represent those victims, the district attorney's office representing those victims. That's what our role is. So as we talk about this, we almost talk about people that commit crimes as though there is some specific classification of persons with certain privileges we need to be considerate of, when the reality is someone has suffered something in relation to that incident. So we need to always remember that. So this is more working in the spirit of Prop 47. There's been some contestment on whether this is appropriate. I will tell you, and Josh, we've had this discussion as well with our council and our city administration. We are definitely pushing the envelope here, absolutely doing that. But we want to make sure that we're sending the message out there that in our community, this behavior will not be tolerated, regardless of what goes on outside of the thought process. Is there is going to be penalty for victimizing our community.
So you all have copies of both the ordinance and the original staff report. It would be great if you could review these during the next few weeks, and maybe we can revisit this and have some further discussion and get your input at the next meeting. We'll continue having our conversations with the Sheriff's Department and other interested parties so we can put together a very thoughtful, careful process in implementing this. Thank you.
Thank you. And
Can we ask questions? Or?
Yes.
well, I'm going to scroll back here for just a second if I can. I was reading from my draft agenda, not my agenda for today. So what I'd like to do is go ahead and, under public business from the floor, agendized item, which we're on right now, I'll go ahead and read that. We do have one speaker. I'd like to hear from that speaker and then open up for questions, comments from the commissioners at that time. That's okay. So again, public business from the floor, agendized item. Citizens who would like to address the Criminal Justice Commission on any agendized item may do so when the item is being considered by the commission. Please complete a speaker card and identify that item you'd like to discuss. You're limited to 3 minutes. We do have one speaker card, Shannon McDonald, under New Business 1.
Good morning. Thank you very much for your time. Let me just get right into it. I'm reading a book currently. It's her name is Joycelyn Pollock, and her idea in Chapter 7 is, what is the role of police in our society? Crime fighter or civil servant? I say both. When I see cops in uniform or police or probation or any law enforcement official in uniform, I think superhero. Sorry. That's just my thing, because I assume those people are there to help, which they are. Few things. 3 things that I like to propose is community corrections, of course, is one thing that we always are going to have to do. If we have to live with these people that are getting off on AB 109, I think that we need to find a way as harmonious as possible to live with them. And obviously we're actually looking at something that's locking less people up, so that means more people are going to have to get involved. Those parents that have to have juveniles or even adults that are benefiting financially from them being on psychotropics, I believe, or any type of but they're also out there in the community causing chaos. I think that there needs to be, that's another thing that I think we can hit them with. Section 8, we can hit them with that. We're already not supposed to have we're not supposed to have felons living in there as it is, so that's another way to hit them. I mean, I have this thing called parental community parenting. And I remember back in the day, it was kind of an old school thing. You know, you see a child doing something bad, we were able to correct that child without repercussions or consequences of that child's parent cussing us out or wanting to fight us. And I think it's wrong. I think that we need to have something to where if all of us adults are supposed to be role models, I consider myself a role model. So if I'm a role model, I have 5 children of my own. If I see children acting up, I don't care if they're teenagers or not. If I should be able to correct that child without repercussions. You see what I'm saying? There's laws that juveniles are supposed to follow, there's laws that law enforcement is supposed to follow, and there's laws that parents are supposed to follow. And if all 3 of these entities are not working together, this is not going to happen. Probation, I don't think probation gets enough credit. I took probation and parole, and one thing I found was probation is the bomb, okay? Because probation, they got a lot of stuff to do. I have an application in for a field position, and I know what that job consists of. I know that I'm going to be having to find programs for these people that we have to keep out of jail. I know that I'm going to have to put a little more care into the way that I take care of business. I'm going to have to look at it like my success is going to be judged based on how many people I can get to stay out of jail. There's no way that I can say all this in 3 minutes. No way, because I have a whole bunch of stuff here. So I just wanted to put that out there, that I am here to assist with the policy-making process, be a part of the solution. I'm not here to just throw out, like I said last night, I'm not just here to throw out complaints. I want to find ways to assist as well. So thank you for your time. That's all I have
Thank you,
to
Ms.
say.
McDonald.
Oh, any questions? I'm sorry.
Now we're open for questions, comments from commissioners, staff.
How about for us? Any questions?
Yeah.
I do. I quickly reviewed it right before the meeting, and I just had a question about the collection of unpaid administrative citations. I know this is it's not limited to, but includes some of which are real property owned by the person, and it says a lien upon you can put a lien on the property, and then it says you can collect, from personal income tax refunds, payments, and or state lottery winnings. Now, I didn't notice anything with respect to personal property. Obviously, I'm thinking the person who's going out to steal, commit a crime, may not have these funds, may not own real property, they may not be getting it, they might not even be filing personal income tax, so there will not be a return. So how else could we collect? Are we going to be able to maybe go after a family member for that person to collect the funds, or could we, I'm not sure, require them to do some sort of community service? Because I'm just concerned that there will not be any funds to collect. And so that way because I love the whole draft idea, you found a way to deter them, from committing these crimes. I just want to make sure that we can actually enforce it and punish them in such a way where when you start with one person, they'll be like, well, look what happened to so-and-so, and that will deter the remaining individuals who are committing these crimes.
Right. No, again, part of the purposes of us being here and bringing this to the commission is to talk that fluidity through this process. If there's better ways to do things, if there's more opportunity for other ideas to bring to the table, and again, this can be adjusted at any time. So I think the point being is that's one of the things that we should bring forward out of this, and a concern, and then Jocelyn and I can work to address that issue.
And we're continuing to explore all of our options for collection. These are the ones we know right now we can absolutely do. We're looking at things like attaching benefits and so forth, but there's a process we'd have to go through.
Sure.
And we're just looking into that. Again, we want to be very thoughtful in moving forward, but you're absolutely right. That's something for us to consider.
Okay, yeah, I just don't want to be like, well, I don't own real property, it won't affect me, I'm good,
Right,
something
I
like,
understand that.
those things.
Right.
That's valid.
But I think it's great. I commend you on already jumping on this and creating something, to move forward, so,
Thank you.
thank you.
Kind of the same question, because a lot of these crimes are, I think, a lot of juvenile crimes with the shoplifting, disturbing the peace, vandalism. Are the parents going to be held responsible?
And that's part of the discussion we're having now. I've actually met with Dr. Ferre the other day from probation. That's the hearing officer for probation. And it's depending on how we manage that process. He's working very closely with us on our truancy project at Antelope Valley High School, on working with the SARB and SART committees and things as well. The thing about it is it's clearly for him, he can designate that parental responsibility based on his input. And so we're talking about how to incorporate that into their process. But as it stands now, that's a very good question. And that's something we need to explore further. Because obviously, there's things in the civil code that demonstrate that the parent is responsible for what their child does, but it's very specific on how it relates. So we got to figure out how we can tie this into that process. So again, it's an experience for us. We're definitely testing uncharted waters, and there's probably going to be issues that arise from it. And just as we've done in that project has been a complete learning process on things that work, things that don't work, how to implement avenues of this, and what resources are out there as alternatives. So again, if someone financial hardship is to a certain extent, there's other things that can be considered. With juveniles especially, Commissioner Smith, is we know how diversion works for juveniles. 99% of what's occurring with juveniles now is diversion oriented.
Exactly. And they have done away basically with the cost of detention, so the parents are not held even responsible for when the kids are locked up. But the other one I was thinking about was, I know with child support, they do away with DMV licenses, commercial licenses, fishing licenses, any kind of privileges.
Right. Those are the things we're looking at. Actually, Dr. Ferre talked specifically about driver's license for juveniles, impact for driver's license, things like that as well. That was a suggestion from him.
Other comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman, I had a question over here.
Yes.
What has the city done to vet the legal authority for doing this program?
The city attorney's office has conducted research on the government code that authorizes cities to adopt an ordinance that provides that certain offenses may be issued an administrative citation. The government code is silent as to whether state code offenses can be incorporated in that. And that's why we say we're pushing the envelope. But there's also no case law out there that says we can't. So we're going to give it a try.
And are we the only city in California that's doing this at this time?
To my knowledge, we're the first city in the state of California that's trying something like this, yes.
Okay. And did we meet with the Sheriff's Department and the District Attorney's Department up here to discuss this program before we implemented it?
We've been talking about an administrative process for site process, and especially in light of Prop 47 for several months in discussion. We've had conversations with the district attorney's office. Their position is they manage cases that come to them. So depending on how, we have diverted cases right now. The Sheriff's Department arrests 6,700 people a year, but we don't file 6,700 cases a year. Okay, there's things that occur, especially like we talk about with juveniles. And again, the practice, my understanding from the district attorney's office, is not to issue a legal opinion as it relates to this. Now, on the other side, the Sheriff's Department has discussed it preliminarily with county council, and the county council doesn't have an issue with it. So that's what's been related. So again, it's a process from this point. The things we need to be very careful about is we don't want to intercede in a point that's inappropriate when a more appropriate system would have been beneficial to the community as far as that individual's history, that, the type of individual they are, what things that are demonstrated through that process, how that's tracked. All those things are developing from this point.
Where a criminal case is more appropriate and will lead to perhaps better results, obviously the administrative procedure set forth in this ordinance would not be the appropriate way to go.
Okay. And just input from Captain Nelson, just a question, what do you think of the program, and how do you think we're going to be able to implement it from the sheriff's perspective?
Clearly, it's going to provide another tool. As is always the case, the devil's in the details, and we're going to have to sit down and actually figure out exactly which cases are going to be appropriate for it, whether or not it's something post-arrest that and booking, and then it's basically a decision as to a diversion type of situation as opposed to not filing. So there's a lot of details to be worked out, but I think ultimately anything that gives us yet another avenue to discourage that behavior is a good thing. So. Does that answer your question?
That answers my question, and the same question for our district attorney's office. You're aware of the program. Any concerns that the district attorney's office might have with a program like this?
Off the top, the primary concerns that I would have is I would want to make sure as, and we, there's no secret that, we've been very aggressive in our filings, and we're working right now. We have training set up with the Sheriff's Department, and we're working on it with CHP as well. So we would want to make sure that this does not conflict with aggressive filing. In particular, realizing, for instance, that Prop 47 has gutted a lot of our weapons, so to speak, as far as fighting crime. We have been, I've talked to my staff, we've roundtabled this, but in particular, there's ways to get around some of the, some of Prop 47's language, so to speak, and its attitude. In particular, if you're, just to give you a perfect example, if you're going into we'll say Walmart with 2 or more people for the purposes of stealing, of committing a shoplift, committing petty theft, the conspiracy, even though they're committing a misdemeanor, the conspiracy makes that a felony. So depending on the what the records are of the defendants and so forth, we'd want to make sure that we have the opportunity to file a felony if, in fact, it looks like they would be worthy of having a felony. Of course, we put a lot of people on probation, and we'd want to make sure that it's completely vetted once an individual is going to be cited, that the individual is not on probation, and even more importantly, doesn't have what's called an ESS sentence, an execution of sentence suspended, which we do quite often. We'll give somebody a break, but say we're giving you 5-year state prison, execution of that sentence suspended, but you commit a violation, it is imposed at that point. So we would want to make sure that we're not hampering any of those efforts. And I've chatted with Mr. Dorico, and he knows that that's some of my, our concerns, that, you don't want to rush, in my opinion, in without looking at all avenues before implementing something like this.
That's absolutely right, and we completely agree with that, and that's why we really need to continue our discussions with all of the parties so that we really are approaching this holistically and sort of together determining the best course of action with a particular person.
And just so you know, there's a process that's already in place as it relates to all cases now. Okay, we can, there can be just another layer in that involvement of things, and we talk about that continually as we work cases now. Okay, as cases are filed or how they're determined and all the process they go through, and the general public doesn't even realize that process before it even goes to the district attorney's office. That has gone from a preliminary stage by a contact with law enforcement all the way through the investigative stage, how that case is filed, filling out DA worksheets, the discussions with filing, all that process. So there's a lot of interceding issues that occur through that whole process to make a determination on what's the appropriate charge and how it should be filed.
I have one other question. In regards to the monies collected from the citations, how will those funds be utilized?
Well, can I answer that? Deputy sheriff right now for a 40-hour car, one 40-hour deputy sheriff for the year is $2.02 a minute. So I can let you know that part of this is a resource management issue, as individuals are costing the community money as they make that contact. We have issues. I will tell you, I have restitution orders in there for $40,000 with people with repayment agreements of $10 a month. Okay, and they can only be on summary probation or extended probation for 5 years. We're never going to see that, okay? This is more direct, as it relates to those things. I'm actually having discussions with our judiciary about changing that restitution process, going more to a civil judgment side to allow the city to take the actions we're able to do as a municipality to have more effectively recover those resources. Again, the community suffers for these things. I think that's a thing we can talk about processes and all those things, and we'll be responsible in working through that. The reality of this is all this costs money. All these things cost money. Every time someone does something that's inappropriate and victimizes someone else, the impact financially is monumental, way beyond just the theft of that item. And so those are the things we're having discussions about every day on how do we make the community whole again? How do we make these individuals responsible, accountable, and make the community whole? And that's what we're about.
Thank you.
I'd just like to comment, commend the staff on really looking out for the welfare of the city and doing something creative and out of the box and bringing it forward, and looking at the quality of life issues there. It's not done anywhere that I've seen. And so in light of the passage of 47, to come forward with this, and we know it's going to be work with district attorney's office and the sheriff's department and so on and such forth, but the alignment of the resources. So I think it's a great idea, and keep moving forward, and it'll evolve as time goes on. So
Thank you.
Appreciate your work.
All right, thank you.
One final comment, Lee, just very supportive of the program, just what you're doing with the DA's office and the sheriff's department and the highway patrol. We have a unique city here where we have a criminal justice commission, and we're all here to discuss these issues and work together on these issues. So great job. Just continue working, and giving us updates would be great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
New business item 2, discussion of proposed revisions to the Lancaster Municipal Code, chronic nuisance. Oh. Come on back.
Got so fired up about this, we forgot about that.
I believe you all have copies of Lancaster Municipal Code Chapter 8.52, which is the chronic nuisance property ordinance codified. This provides that certain calls for service with the sheriff's department at a specific property, if a property generates more than, I believe it's 5 calls for service right now, they can be issued a citation, an administrative citation. Again, as currently written and as the implementation rolled out over the last several years, it's rather cumbersome. There are a lot of layers before we really get to accountability. And so we're envisioning revising this chapter so it's a little more like the ordinance we just discussed. So it's a more direct administrative citation process rather than all of these layers. We're definitely going to want to get your input on this. This is another one we want to, if we revise it, we want to be very thoughtful in doing so. There's no point in drafting an ordinance and taking it to City Council if it's not going to make things better. So if you would have the time over the next month to refresh your memory as to what the chapter currently reads, and maybe we can revisit this and have some in-depth discussion at the next meeting, that would be extremely helpful.
Yeah, I would suggest we keep this on the agenda then for further discussion so we have a chance to look at it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So we're issuing homework assignments today. So
Sorry.
Sorry about that, Dr. Vieira. So, okay.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you.
All right.
And looking at new business item number 3, I think this is probably another homework assignment. We're talking about discussion of regarding the potential commission work plan. And what I would ask commissioners, if you could, prior to our next meeting, think about if there's particular areas of interest that you might have with regards to us as a commission for the 2015 goals or areas that you would like to see addressed, whether it be along the lines of quality of life or crime in the city, anything that you'd like to address. Let's bring that back, keep this on the agenda as a discussion item, and put together what those future goals may be for 2015 to focus on. Okay? At this time, I think I'd like to go back now to the consent calendar, which I skipped over earlier. So if I get a motion on that.
Motion to vote.
And this is for our minutes.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion, questions? No? Call for the vote. That passes unanimously. So now we'll move back to commission staff presentations, updates, and reports. And I believe we're going to start off with our city manager, Mr. Martin Bozigian, on an informational item.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. What I wanted to do was, as you're thinking about your work plan, and it's a plan, I wanted to give you some statistics or at least things to think about. Because a plan is not, telling someone we want this to happen. We want crime to be lower. That's what we all want. A plan is where you want to work and what you want to affect as citizen commissioners. Your commission has more attention, which is good, than any other commission in terms of we always have the vice mayor here, we have law enforcement here, so the opportunity here is great. But the opportunity, you need to know where we're starting from. There's, as we've talked a lot about, there's the perception and the reality of crime. And first you need to think about, what do you think about safety? Not crime, right? What do you think about safety, and what do other people that live other places think about safety? So start with an easy one. You guys have probably mostly been to San Luis Obispo or know about San Luis Obispo? Any of you? And then if you were to, do you think people in San Luis Obispo feel safer than people in the Antelope Valley? Honest question, there's not a right answer. What would you think, Jeff?
I would think yes. I would think so, yes.
It would probably surprise you all to know that if you go by crime rate, San Luis Obispo's crime rate is 53% higher than the city of Lancaster. That doesn't mean they're unsafe. I mean, they have more property crime, we have more crimes against persons, but it shows that it's not just a number chase. It's what you do and what people feel safe and how you dig down into it. That's what you guys are there for. We had the occasion, myself, Mr. DeRico, Captain Nelson, and our Deputy City Manager, Jason Cottle, to meet with Lancaster Baptist, and we were talking about some public safety issues. We got in a very good discussion, so I asked Lee if he thought it would be good to have that same abbreviated discussion here about those stats, things to think about, like crime rate and such. So I'm going to pass these out. I apologize to those in the audience. We're old school. I didn't think that we could actually put this on a screen. So as you're thinking about what you want to do this year, there's certain statistics. You've heard a lot about Prop 47. You've heard a lot about everything that's happening. But what does that relate to? That relates to activity. Okay, crime rate or any other measures are not the only measure of what it is you're doing. What we've done is we've gathered, thanks to the work of Pat and his staff, gathered some information here on indicators so that you know the activity levels at the station. So what we did is we took 7 pretty high activity stations and then did an average. You can see on the bottom there the number of deputies in each station. This doesn't make a distinction between city and county. It's Lancaster Station and everything they're responsible for, Palmdale Station, etc. So you can see how Lancaster stacks up. In terms of Part 1 crimes, 30 per deputy, and you can see how all of those do, and the average for those stations is 25. But here's where it starts to get interesting. And this is through November, which is the latest the stats are available. Lancaster deputies, on average, make 56 arrests per deputy. Okay, that's compared to 36 for Palmdale and an average of those stations of 39. Why is that important? You have deputies out there that are doing their job. Lee talks about $2.02 a minute. We're getting our money's worth out of those deputies. They're making arrests. They're doing it. The other thing, as Captain Nelson will point out, arrests can lead to more crime reports. He was quoted in the paper as that. If you hook someone up for a burglary, they may be responsible for 10 burglaries. Only 8 of them maybe were reported. That results in 2 additional burglaries, perhaps. So more activity can relate to more crime reports. Here's a very important statistic that our council has looked at a lot, which is observations. Essentially, that means, and Pat could explain it better, it means self-initiated activity. When deputies aren't chasing the radio and taking calls, what are they doing on their own? I give our station a lot of credit. They're probably a little heavier in terms of a team concept, LANCAP, robbery suppression, burglary suppression, which those teams are able to go out and do more self-initiated activity than the patrol teams. But on average, this station does 443 per deputy through November. Compare that to 328 for Palmdale and some of the other ones there, and an average of 391. And this is not a bashing any other station. It's just showing how we stack up. What that means is our deputies on average are out there also looking at things other than just going to crime reports. You can look and see that Palmdale and Lancaster both have the highest calls. Here's another great statistic. In terms of dissolvency rate, what the detectives and the investigators are solving, Lancaster and Palmdale have the 2 highest rates of all 7 of those stations. The point is, you have a big hurdle and a challenge in the Antelope Valley, but you also have active deputies that are rising to that challenge. Page number 2 shows just where we've been. It's instructive to look at where the city was in 2007 with a crime rate of almost, need my glasses, 450, down to being able to maintain, even in the face, you can see it since 2010 with prison realignment and all of that, maintain a crime rate under 300. That's something to be proud of, and that's something that we've been able to draw the line on that through your work, through the deputies, through the whole community, because it's not just law enforcement. The next one, although you can't just go by crime rate, but the next one is to at least know what the crime rate is. This is based on the 2013 FBA crime statistics, the most recent available. 2014 will be available in a couple months. You can see on that of all the cities in California, the average crime rate is 316 per 10,000. Lancaster in yellow there is at 274. Lower than cities such as West Hollywood, San Luis Obispo, Walnut Creek, Santa Barbara, Tehachapi, Pasadena, and Malibu. I'm not saying that we should just say, hey, we declare victory, because we shouldn't. There's a lot of work to do. But it's not just crime rate. Okay? It's what do people feel? What's the perception? What kind of crimes? Where are those crimes occurring? If someone goes to a shopping center every single time, every week to shop, and they feel unsafe, I don't care what your crime rate is, they don't feel safe. They do not feel their community safe. That's where I believe, and we believe, you guys can get involved in things of that nature. As you embark on this, it's important to do that. It's also the perception. If you have a media, and I'm not blaming the media, but if you have a media that always covers crime and another community that doesn't cover it as much, that shapes perception. If you have a community that continuously talks about the problems you have and another community doesn't, talks about something else, that shapes perception. We shouldn't hide from problems, but we should also think about what it is you're doing deeper than just giving a goal of what you want the sheriff's crime rate to do. And I'm not saying that's what your goal would be. So this is just sort of, as Lee said, a homework assignment. This is also a homework assignment to look at it as you're coming up and discussing your work plan over the next several months. I'd like to say I can answer the questions on this, but Pat's probably the better person to do it. So if you have any questions, feel free.
Just, I'd comment, great information, thought-provoking when you look at the fact that on the surface it looks like we're doing fine with regards to crime rates going down as you look at part 1, but is it more of a perception issue? Not sure, need to take a look at it. One of the questions that comes to mind is that, do we have the ability, and Jim, you may know, to ask our community through surveys or some type of instruments, what are their thoughts with regards to safety, and what are those indicators of that, which might drive you to where we may want to go as well? If we're making progress here, but we're not making progress elsewhere, where may we take a look at that?
The thing that excites me about this is that there is a plethora of research out there that backs this up. I mean, there was a study done up in Flint, Michigan, back in the late 70s, where the cops were out on the beat. Their crime rate was going through the roof, but guess what? Because the person knew the cop on the beat, the fear of crime was actually going down. And those are the two things that we have to attack always: is crime frequency and fear of crime. And it sounds like where they're going with this is pretty good.
And I can answer as far as that Dr. Vieira. What we do, typically, like we've identified an area, and the captain has shared with me some plans that he has for the very near future on some things you're going to see today as far as statistically where we're being impacted. But we also conduct surveys in those areas with his COPS teams that come up into the area and things as well. And we always do a preliminary, and then we always do a follow-up base to see really how well did we do. How did we change that community in that particular area? The thing I want to point out here under Pat's leadership at the station, the things we're talking about now with observations and self-initiated activity several years ago were not the same. Okay, some of the discussions we were talking about is unallocated time and how resources were managed as far as calls for service. We as a city have taken on a lot of those quality of life issues to address, so Pat's station is not handling that part, apportionment, or referring folks to us, which I think is more appropriate based on resource management with our sheriff resources. And it has allowed the deputies to do other things that are more appropriate based on what their role is in crime fighting. But that is a tremendous statistic when you look on self-initiated activity. I'm very proud of our deputies and what Pat has done at the station and these guys' effort, because that is not typical. Okay, so there's a significant turnaround as far as the deputies out there actively working. And Mark's absolutely right, and we can talk to you, and anyone that's been in law enforcement understand, especially if you're, the burglary one is the perfect one, you're a burglary detective. And then for the purposes of the DA, if some burglar that you're interviewing admits to all these other burglaries, you're going to, even if they're unreported, you're going to write a report and initiate that investigation on those cases, because you want to make sure whatever you're filing with the DA is complete and appropriate based on what that person's done. Well, that can drive numbers for you. It does. But, you know, so we talk a lot about crime rate numbers and those things as well, but I think what's good about this is we're looking at it from the big picture aspect. And perception is huge. When this graph was put together, I was like, no way, that can't be possible.
Yeah, it's apparent deputies, law enforcement's doing the work, but then it leads to, well, you know, is it blight? Is it certain areas that maybe it's cleaning up a particular neighborhood or cleaning up something that may make others feel more safe, which may make a difference? Not sure, but it may be other factors to consider.
As Lee said, this is eye-opening. I got to give our Deputy City Manager, Jason Cottle, credit because, you know, he doesn't work this every day, but obviously he's very familiar with it. And he got us to look and say, you know, instead of looking at your crime rate, does it go up and down, look at what other cities are. Do it more, put it more in context. So I think, you know, that's a good example of a role that you folks play too. You know, some of you in your walks of life don't deal with public safety every day, but you're going to have a much different take on it, the blight or whatever, that's going to add to the discussion and the solution to people that do sheriff's departments that's their job every day. So we do need those other voices. You guys play a critically important role, and there's not an easy answer to this, but a work plan that's well thought out could really help this community.
Any other comments? Nope. No? Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to our monthly crime stats. Mr. Jim Cobalt.
Thank you, Chairman Vieira. Measurement period for this report is January 4th through January 31st, 2015. As we take a look at the weeks of week 2 through week 5, you can see the data up there. I think week 5 might be a little incomplete yet as the time this report was put together. You can see the violent crime arrests, property crime arrests, and the total number of reports issued up there. When we take a look at the average and median, we're starting to show a little bit of improvement there. For this report, our weekly average is 78.25 with a weekly median of 80.5, whereas in January our report to you had an 89.2 and an 88 median. When we take a look at this really gives us 24 months. When we take a look at it, January 15 to January 14 is up 14%. When I put this together, we were at 423. We're at 424 now for Part 1 crimes for January. But just as a caveat to that, what you need to understand is we always see this, or we frequently see this phenomenon in January because there's some cleanup work being done from 2014, and some of those reports are being included in ours. You need to know for the actual hard numbers up here, 22 of those particular reports occurred in 2014 or before. So that we really didn't have 423 or 424 Part 1 crimes committed in January. That's just kind of the bleed over because they're still adjusting their numbers. Sometimes something that wasn't a Part 1 crime all of a sudden becomes a Part 1 crime, and that's carried over into the next year. We conceded our crime rate for our population when we take January of 14 to December should be it should be February of 14 through January of 15. Typo there. It's 290.1. That's as opposed to what's being shown as our 2014 crime rate of 286.91. We take a look at our most active reporting districts. We had 5 of them. Pretty routine for the same 5 normally. 1137, 1135, 1132, 1126, and 1127. When we take a look at how that lays out across the city, you can see the highest density areas there in the darker orange or red. Again, these areas are pretty symptomatic of what we report month to month. Generally includes Valley Central Way, 10th West and Avenue K, Lancaster Boulevard and the surrounding area, and 20th Street East and Avenue J. Take a look at residential burglaries by reporting district. 1137 had 21, 1135 had 10, 1132 had 8, and 1133 had 6. Larcenies involving vehicles, 1137 was the most active, followed by 1124, 26, and 35 with 4, and 1121, 31, and 33 had 3 each. We look at our weekly trends. First, look at the crime categories that are trending up. Robbery is showing an increase there. Our baseline for robbery is generally about 5.9 per week. You can see we had a week there in week 3 where we spiked up to about 12, and that's causing that trend line, the green trend line, to elevate a little bit. For burglary, we see a increase in our trend line there as well. Our baseline, our average number for each week is 23.4. You can see that the trend line is just now going up and touching that. We did have a week back around the Christmas time where we spiked up a little bit, and that's kind of normal for right before Christmas. Grand theft auto is up a little bit. You can see the trend line going up there. We had a couple of weeks back in late 2014 that kind of spiked that up a little bit. You can see subsequent weeks are kind of leveling out just a little bit. Homicide, looking at the crimes that are trending flat right now, homicide continues to trend flat. The rape continues to trend flat. Both rape and homicide, again, are very low frequency crimes for us. This is the one that's kind of nice. We've been coming in here report after report for the past several months talking about how larceny is going up. You can see that larceny is kind of flattening out there as far as the trend line goes, and that's kind of a nice thing. If that continues, we might be able to expect maybe a little bit of a decline in things. Assault, you can see that our assault numbers are really dropping. We average 14.8 assaults per week. You can see that we haven't really gotten close to that since about week 29 of 2014. So things are looking pretty good in the assault category. Arson also shows a good downward trend. This is how the crimes that we had included in the report laid out across the city, also with the color coding of the reporting districts by the volume of Part 1 crimes in those reporting districts. This is our calls for service. There really aren't anything new, or there aren't any locations that are new on here. These are pretty standard fare for us. And this is how they lay out across the city. Our crime forecast for February of 2015 is 325. That's what the model shows. We'll probably, in looking at things, be maybe a little bit over that in looking at our previous forecasts. The model's catching up with some of the more recent upticks we've had. When we take a look at it, our January crime forecast was 372. When we put this together, we were at 423, which gives us an 88% accuracy rate. And that's all I've got. Any questions?
Questions, comments? Nope. Thank you, Jim. And we'll move on to arrest stats. Deputy Mike Ruiz.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Arrest stats for the month of January 2015 is as follows. Beginning with our burglary suppression team. All right. It would lead off with felony arrest. We have 27. Search warrants that were executed in the month of January were 6. Additional warrant arrest was 13. One firearm was recovered, and over $72,617 dollars worth of property and stolen items were recovered that month. So it's a very productive month, bleed over from some burglaries that happened in December. We're very proud of their activity as always, but very productive also month. Our LANCAP team also had 37 felony arrests, 7 misdemeanor arrests, 5 firearms were recovered. Of those 37 felony arrests, 8 of those were parolees. And in narcotics, $3,232 was recovered, taken off the streets. And then our narcotics team also is pretty active with 7 felony arrests, with 30 grams of methamphetamine, almost 440 grams of marijuana. They executed 7 search warrants, and 9 firearms were recovered. So that's a very productive month for them also in regards to firearms. And then we're also happy to report that our sheriff station personnel, with the support from the Antelope Valley Sheriff's Boosters, entered the Lancaster Corporate Challenge, and we placed 3rd place in the bowling tournament, and we're looking forward to many of the other future events that we've registered for. Softball team, horseshoes, other events such as that. Looking forward to the 5K on the 21st, also the opening ceremonies. Any questions?
Wasn't there a guarantee that you were going to come in first?
Me specifically,
if I
sir?
remember at the sheriff board meeting.
Oh, yeah, we're definitely going to come in first.
Okay, I just wanted to get that on.
We just want to throw that out there.
Sure. Great job, Mike. Great
Thank
job.
you very much. All right, thank you.
Mike.
Have a good day.
You too. And from the California Highway Patrol update, let's Bernier.
Good morning.
Morning.
So far, 2013 is, or 2015 compared to 2013 and 2014 is looking not too bad. With our DUI stats, though, the DUI crashes have actually gone up quite a bit, a little over 40% from 2015 over 2014 in January. The numbers are, to put it in perspective, there were 9 in 2014, there were 13 in this month in 2015. Our DUI arrests are about the same, just slightly lower. We had 50 as opposed to 59. Our overall arrests are hovering about the same, just within 2% of the previous year. Reportable accidents, though, is kind of the good news. We're down 32% overall on accidents, and the injury accidents are down 28%. Our fatal accidents, we had 2 in January of 2014. The 3-year average is generally we have 2. This year, so far, we've had 3, so we're a little bit up on the fatals. We are down a few bodies due to injuries and whatnot, so we're trying the best we can with what we've got. We've got a few new people coming in with the transfers, so things should be looking up as the year progresses.
Comments, questions? No? All right, well, thank you very much. And from Deputy District Attorney, Mr. Stephen Franklin.
Morning.
Morning.
Looking at January's filing statistics, in January of 2015, for felonies, we filed 263, declined 89. That's a total of 352. So to compare that to January, we filed 319 felonies, rejected 130 cases, but we had 449 cases that were submitted. So looking at that, it looks about approximately a 23% decrease in felonies being submitted for evaluation, and that seems to be the trend from the last few months. Is about anywhere from the 23 to 30% decrease in felonies. Again, which is pretty much, I think, what was anticipated given Proposition 47 and removing much of the tools that we had to prosecute crime. So as far as misdemeanors, in January of 2015, there was a total of 607 cases submitted for examination, of which we filed 499 and rejected 108. So that is, when I looked at the statistics, again, it looked like about a 10% increase in misdemeanor filings. So I'm not sure where that discrepancy is, and something maybe I would meet with Mr. DeRico on at some time and see if, I don't know if maybe some of these stores are simply not arresting now, knowing it's a revolving door process. I just don't know. But it's probably going to be worthy of examination at some point. But you should have theoretically a 30%, we have a 23% decrease in felonies. You would think we'd have a 23% increase in misdemeanors. So it'd be interesting to see what some of the large chains are actually doing, or if they've revised their policy. And then finally, just commenting on Mark's comments about perception, I do think from some of the feedback that I get that, not only a perception of the public, but it's kind of important what's the perception of the bad guy. And pretty much all the feedback I get is the perception of the bad guys. They learn, especially the ones that come from other areas up here to commit crimes, they learn pretty quick, it's not worth it. If you're going to commit crime, do it elsewhere, because you're going to really be held accountable up here and get what you really deserve, which is clearly how I like it. It's it's true justice at that point, as opposed to just negotiating a case to move it along. We don't do that, which is why we always have a very high percentage of jury trials, because sometimes we just, look, this case is going to have to be tried, and that's the way it goes. We're not going to cut you a deal just to move it along. So, and the bad guys know that, and they know it from the sheriff's department. They don't mess around, and we have a bench that enforces pretty well. So I think that's also a perception that's worthy of examining. And pending any questions, that completes what I have.
Well, that's good to hear. Any questions, comments?
Mr. Franklin, on that 23%, do you believe on the felony, that is directly related to Prop?
Yeah, I haven't actually done an in-depth statistical analysis, but I would say that with petty theft with a prior, since we don't have that anymore, we don't have commercial burglary anymore, and straight possession of narcotics is no longer a felony, so we don't have that anymore. So that sounds about, as far as a gut check, I think that's pretty good. And we're aggressive, so, if we were lazy in the DA's office here, it would actually even be higher. But as I was indicating earlier, commenting on the new ordinance, we'll file the conspiracies. We'll file the identity theft. We'll make sure that we're filing a 10851, which is a vehicle code taking without a authorization, as opposed to a grand theft auto, because the 10851 is a felony. So if we were not doing that, it might even be a little bit higher as far as that.
Business Watch Subcommittee. Was this going to be Mr. Cobalt? Okay. A lot of day left.
Okay, this Business Improvement Group report is for January 2015. Present year compared to previous year in the 10th Street West and Avenue K area, you can see that we are down 15% year to year, which is really good. Again, we continue with the success that we had in December. There were no reported thefts from auto. That's really important because this used to be a pretty substantial area with the shopping center down there and a large parking lots and everything else. There was nothing there. Again, both major parking lots in this area are being actively patrolled by private security, which we've encouraged to them. This is probably the area that's shown the most progress. Present year to previous year comparison, down 37%. During January of 2015, there were no reported thefts from auto. That's as opposed to last month when we reported to you they had one. However, one of the things that we are seeing an uptick in the Valley Central Way area is the purse snatches seem to be a little bit on the uptick over there. We take a look at Lancaster Boulevard. They're up 11%, and they have a security patrol working now. They managed to keep January numbers this year the same as January numbers last year. When we take a look at the East Avenue J, this is probably our biggest challenge right now. We're up 15% over there. During December or should be during January of 2014, 19 of the 26 Part 1 crimes, or 73%, were located at the Walmart 1731 East Avenue J. That's a significant amount. That's up a little bit from the previous report. One of the issues that we have with the business improvement groups over on the east side of town is they do a really good job with loss prevention inside the stores. It's tending that area outside the stores where it gets to be kind of an issue with them. We've discussed some strategies with Walmart over there. Some they're working, some they're not, in terms of working with us. We did have at our business improvement groups this past meeting at the end of January, we did have actually one of the representatives from the property management group that manages several of the properties over there, and they were interested in some of our ideas, so we're going to see how that pans out and see if we can have any impact on that area outside the stores.
Is there any current private security service in those locations now?
Well, some of them have, like some guy that they hired who comes out and walks around once in a while. The problem is that you need to have somebody who's, like 10th and K have found out in Valley Central Way, they've got good, aggressive private security companies that work hand in hand with the Sheriff's Department, as opposed to some guy who comes out and walks around.
Is that an issue, Jim, you think, with the store itself? Are there policies or?
Well, the literature on Walmart is that they spend on average per store $45,000 a year nationally for exterior parking lot security. I'm not sure how much security you can get for $45,000 a year. In today's market.
I can tell you this, we have a good relationship with them as it relates to especially their loss prevention issues, where we were several years ago and where we are now based on what they're doing internally. But as Jim's pointed out, it's an employee of theirs that they hire. It's usually someone that's elderly, they have a car. They don't really approach anybody. Okay, so the reality of that is we have an active deputy in that area too as well, but that's managing both sides of the street. So if he's not in the immediate area, then we're having the discussion about more appropriate ways for them to deal, especially in light of thefts and carts and all kinds of issues for the area there.
Yeah, the biggest theft that they have over there is the shopping cart walkout, where they'll fill up the shopping cart and head for the door. All Walmart would have to do, they already have the system on property that stops you from taking your shopping cart out of the parking lot. That very same company has another system that you can add on to that if a shopping cart goes through the checkout lanes, they can release the wheels on it to go out the front door. But if they don't go through the checkout and have that released, then they stop within whatever foot you set as the limit when they get close to the front door. And that would really kind of curtail that real quickly for them, but they haven't done it yet.
Other comments, questions? Okay, thank you. Public business from the floor, non-agendized items. Again, this portion of the agenda allows an individual the opportunity to address the commission on any item not on the agenda, limited from taking action on the item, and be referred to staff. In 3 minutes, we do have one speaker, Shannon McDonald.
Good morning again. This is actually about me. I feel kind of bad that I didn't explain who I am. My name is Shannon McDonald. I received my associates in Administration of Justice from Antelope Valley College. I received my sociology degree from Cal State Bakersfield on the Antelope Valley College, and I also received my master's in public administration, where I did nothing but public policy administration classes for 4 years at Cal State Bakersfield, actually on the campus of Cal State Bakersfield. I wanted to address Commissioner Smith because I've been with someone for the last 13 years who speaks extremely highly of you, the Deputy Probation Officer, Stanley Jaycox. He speaks extremely highly of you, and he said you told him something that I think I should share, and that is something to the effect of, I can't quote it exactly, but something to the effect of, if you're happy at home, bring it to work. And at the time, I guess he didn't understand because at that time he wasn't happy. And I believe the same thing with our law enforcement as well, that if your home life's not that happy, I think that we need to start making our jobs a happy place and start putting happy smiles on other people's faces, and maybe that'll make us happy. Because if we're trying to keep from arresting these people, then we're going to have to find civil, social ways to actually talk to them and make friends and be nice, and that goes for everybody. So I wanted to tell you that that idea that you gave him has really helped, and we've had many discussions. As you know, he's about 24 years older than I am, so he's been there for 34 years, so he definitely has the experience to share with me, and he fought with me about probation for a while. And finally, when he saw that I really wanted to do it, he finally just said, fine, but you can only go in as a field officer and this and that as a two. So I just wanted to thank you for your input and helping him and understand what that meant, because he does understand fully what it means now. So thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our item. So any comments from commissioners in closing? Hearing none, this meeting stands adjourned at 11:10, and our next meeting is scheduled for the 11th of March,